So I assume all of you are here because you are interested in some shape in the Master of Kinesiology program with a specialization in applied exercise physiology. So we'll go through a bit of the context of the program, the content of the program, practicums and possible career outcomes, something I missed talking about, admissions. I am the one who handles all of the applications initially, so I'm an expert on that, and then into speaking with our current and former students. Context of the program, I don't know why it's doing it one at a time, but the program has been around for a long time, since 1988, and back then it wasn't even the Faculty of Kinesiology, it was the Faculty of Physical Education. And back in 1988, there were two specializations, exercise and functional fitness, and the art and science of coaching. The exercise and functional fitness is what has evolved into what we call the Master of Kinesiology program today. There was a brief suspension when some resources and faculty were moved around and we didn't have the teaching expertise required, but the program was reactivated and redesigned in 2014, and we are currently on our 7th generation or cohort of students. The program is course-based, so for any of you out there who are terrified at the concept of doing a full-on master's thesis, you don't need to do that in this program, and that's appealing to a lot of students. It takes, on average, 20 months. Occasionally, students might choose to stretch it out to a 3-year sort of program and take a lighter load across those 3 years. Most students are aiming for the 20 months in duration. We've got extensive hands-on learning components and integrative practicum placements. And ultimately, you're learning advanced theoretical and practical skills in exercise physiology and exercise science. This is a synopsis of the course, of the entire program, if you were to take it in 20 months. Louis, do you want to talk about courses right now while this screen is up?
Good. I was hoping you would allow me in on this screen, Alex, because I didn't do a separate slide. So, apologies if I'm a little hazy on a couple of points on the slide, and the reason for that is because actually Alex and I have been working very hard on the program over the past year, and so what we've done is we've reached out to a range of different people that might have an opinion on how best this course move forwards. And so what we've done is spoken to prospective employers, we've spoken to people that host our students and practicums, we've spoken to our current students, to previous alumni, and also, of course, had extensive discussions across the faculty as well. And the outcome of all of this is that the program has been reshaped to a certain extent. Some things quite extensively, other things just slightly tweaked here and there. But it means that the program looks at quite a different shape now than it did, say, 2 or 3 years ago. Hence, there may be a couple of things that trip me up, but I'll try and talk through I'll talk through the program now anyway. So as you can see on this slide, we have both a fall, winter, and then a spring-summer teaching period on the program. The spring-summer period typically is a lot lighter in load than the other two. So if you needed a break or to get away, or you wanted to use that opportunity in order to do your practicums, then there's every opportunity for those things to happen. However, we should say that both current and previous students have commented on the fact that the actual teaching program itself during the fall and winter semesters is pretty heavy. And so one of the things that I'm sure Alex will talk about is what are the commitments you take on alongside the program, and that we would just urge you to be a little bit cautious about that. So I just wanted to mention that up front. So when you begin on the program in the fall, there's a series of courses that you take. The first one is the seminar series, which is currently hosted by Martin McInnes. And the seminar series consists of a group of invited speakers, some external, some from within the faculty, that come and give a seminar. And that occurs each week throughout both the fall and winter semester. The program continues into the second year as well. So you'll see that if you scan down to year 2, there's a seminar series, and that's the same seminar series. So we actually group both the first and second years together. And this is actually one of the modifications that we've had. And one of the reasons for us doing that is because we really want to facilitate the interaction between first and second years. And I think currently we have only second years on the call, so I can be rude about the first years who the new intake will be integrating with, if I needed to be, and maybe get away with that. But actually, what we found is that there's been a lot of benefit in the interaction between those the two programs, and surprisingly it didn't happen as much as we would have liked in the past. So this is one of the reasons why we've done that. So you take the same seminar series through both years, and Martin, in running the program, is aware that the same students will be attending for 2 years, so we've organized the speakers so that they don't repeat themselves, so you don't have to sit through the same things on the second time around. Then in the fall, you also take exercise psychology. This was one of the areas where the program has changed a little bit. Previously, it used to be a broader psychology program. Now we focused it specifically on exercise psychology, which is looking at things like motivation for exercise, adherence to exercise, and those kind of things. So particularly emphasizing the kind of skills that you would need if you want to work in a clinical environment. And I pick out a clinical environment only because the assumption is if you're interested in more of a high performance environment, then you're probably not going to be working with people who are struggling with motivation to exercise on a regular basis. But that forms a primary aspect of that. And the bit of psychology that we've dropped is more based around the specific psychological tools and interventions used in high performance. And although that might be disappointing, or that might initially sound disappointing if you're interested in high performance psychology, the reason for doing that is because actually only accredited psychologists are allowed to deliver those kind of interventions. So it was almost in the past as if we were dragging you into the candy store, showing you all the treats, but then saying, but you can't use some of these. So we've restructured the program in a way that means that you can use all of the treats that you see in the store in exercise psychology. But the feedback we had both from our potential employers and also from our alumni was that the course was very valuable, very useful. So we contemplated dropping it completely, but we were told no, it was something that the students particularly valued, so that's why we kept it in. Then we moved down to Canis 606, which is a practical lab-based skills course. And it also runs through in the winter semester as well. And the aim of this course that runs kind of long and thin through fall and winter is it really gives you a solid grounding in the lab. And we essentially let you loose on all of the equipment. In fact, you might even say we kind of pitch you into the lab and say, okay, get to grips with all the equipment, learn how to use it, learn how to conduct tests, learn how to work with people, so that you're really focused on developing the practical skills in the lab, so that when you then go on practicum or you start in the workplace, there may be some subtle differences in terms of the exact equipment that you're using, but you feel very comfortable and competent working equipment in the lab, evaluating people. That's the broad emphasis of that program. And then the final exercise physiology course in the full semester in year 1 in 673 is kind of like the foundation exercise physiology course. So we recognize that people come from a range of different backgrounds onto this program. Some may have come through the faculty here at U of C, others may have come through different faculties, and their exposure to exercise physiology previously may be varied. So our aim is to try to bring everybody up to a master's level of exercise physiology. And indeed, last semester, this was one of the courses that I was teaching, although actually we don't have anyone from that course on the call today, do we? So if you want to know how lousy I am at teaching, you don't have anyone to ask. You have to reach out to some of the first years to find out how traumatized they were from being taught exercise physiology by me. In the winter semester, you can see that there are the follow-on elements. So 617 is a seminar series that follows on from the first semester, the same with 606. And then the Canis 773 is kind of the building block from exercise physiology. So in exercise physiology, we introduce the broad concepts in a relatively straightforward format. In 773, integrative exercise physiology, we're now considering how the different physiological systems fit or work together, as opposed to just the systems in isolation on their own. So it's a significant step up. And again, this is a course that's taught by Martin McInnes. And he also kind of brings brings with that some of his own particular interests in terms of his research and investigations into physiology. And then Canis 775 is focused on clinical exercise physiology. And this is one of the areas where the program has changed for people like Nick, one of our alumni who's on this call, because he previously took this course in the second year, but we recognize that a substantial number of our MKin students are particularly interested in clinical exercise physiology. In other words, they want to go on and become clinical exercise physiologists. And so we wanted to make sure that we prioritized and emphasized clinical exercise physiology. And so we've done that by moving it into the first year so that you get exposure to clinical exercise physiology much earlier on in the program. And really the aim of this course is to introduce you to exercise physiology in a clinical environment and some of the core skills involved in dealing with clinical patients specifically, as opposed to, for example, the lab skills, which are more about conducting exercise tests. Then in the spring and summer, we have the practicum. So I will take that opportunity to pause for a second and I'll hand over to Alex. Do you want to wait until the end, Alex, and then talk about the practicums?
I can talk briefly about the coursework here.
Great.
This is a change for the current and alumni students. This is something that will be starting next year. It used to just be, so for practicums, you have to do 2 practicums during your program, and that used to be associated 1 practicum per course. We've changed this now so that you are registered in 4 1.5 credit courses: spring, summer, fall, winter, and you can complete your 2 practicum placements anytime over those 4 semesters. So you could start a placement in May, take a break from it because maybe that group of athletes isn't working in August through November, and then start again in December. And this way too, we make sure that everyone is registered in the same courses, so everyone is getting the same tutorial content. Everyone is getting the same discussions on how to be prepared for practicum placements. What are your, sorry, words are really hard today apparently. What should you expect moving into a practicum placement? What are your best practices interacting with a supervisor? Setting some goals, what are some things you should think about when you're setting goals for a practicum placement? This way everyone is getting that upfront before they start a placement. Whereas before, some students were getting that in spring when they did their first placement, and some students weren't getting that until, let's say, January, because they were doing both placements in winter. So we've changed the layout of the courses so that everyone gets set up the same way, but the practicums themselves are unchanged. You are still doing a minimum of 2 placements of 200 hours over the course of the program. Back to you, Louis.
Thank you, Alex. And apologies if I caused you to lose track by sending a message out on the chat while we were going. Although I think I may have actually sent it inadvertently only to the waiting room. So I don't know if everybody can see it or not. So I'm going to resend it and apologize if everybody gets it at this twice. Okay, so as we move on to year 2 then, you can see that the seminar series, as I mentioned already, is continued into the second year. And then we have Canis 716, which is a new course. And one of the bits of feedback that we heard, particularly from some of our alumni from a few years ago, was that one of the things they really valued was the opportunity to do some kind of meaningful project work as part of the program. And that was actually something that had been dropped in more recent years. So when Alex gave you a very quick potted history of the program, in the early days of the program, there was a very, very tight link between the program and the Canadian Institute of Sport, such that some of the people teaching on the program were also working in the Canadian Sports Institute. And so the projects often tended to be focused on questions that they had at the Sports Institute as well. When the program went through some significant changes, that link with the Canadian Sports Institute was weakened a little bit, in that we still have great connections there, but we don't have the same people from the Canadian Sports Institute now delivering on the program on a regular basis. And that opportunity to do that kind of project work disappeared with it. So we've now brought that back, and our aim is that you'll see both 716 and then in the winter semester 718, the Capstone Project itself. These two go hand in hand, and essentially they're an opportunity for you to plan in the case of 716 and then conduct in the case of 718 your own Capstone Project. And this may be linked to your practicum as well. So this could be something that you do in conjunction with Alex, working with some external partners, or indeed you can do practicums internally as well. So it could be done on an internal within the faculty basis or across different faculties within the university. But the idea is that you have something that you're passionate and excited about, that you would like to dig your teeth into in a project form, and the collaborative inquiry and the Capstone Project give you the opportunity to do that. It also means that when you finish this program, you should have some kind of a nice portfolio to be able to take with you that demonstrates your interests and what you're capable of for future employers and other projects. Canis 785 is a course that I've taught, and we do have a couple of students that have suffered with me through the autumn semester on that. So if there's something you desperately need to know about training strategies, then you can ask them about it. But in essence, the focus on training strategies is really to think about the translation of the laboratory tests that you've conducted into training programs themselves. So we start to look at what kinds of processes and strategies do you go through in order to change or translate the training. I've caught that bug that you had, Alex, with a lack of words, and you're not using the chat function to put me off either, so I have no excuse. So yes, we're looking at translating the laboratory tests and the data you gather in the lab into meaningful training programs. And so, for example, the assessment on this program, on this course last semester was to provide a case study of an individual and the associated training program for that individual as how you would recommend, what training program you would put together to enable that person to achieve their goals. The 693 is the Practicum Part 3, so that's what Alex was already talking about. So we broke the Practicum into several discrete elements in order that you get regular contact with Alex to discuss your practicum on an ongoing basis. And so you'll see that it's not just in the spring and summer, but it's also in the fall and winter of the second year too. And the idea is that we can just drip feed different bits relevant to the practicum over that period of time to support you in what you're doing. But your practicum can take place at any point in that whole range of semesters. So you might get it all done in the spring and summer, for example, but you will still have some contact with Alex in the fall and winter. So that's the second year full program complete, and we've covered most of the second year winter term as well. So the one course that I haven't touched on is the nutrition course. And I'm trying to think, was this one that we moved as well, Alex? So this one, Nick will tell you, used to occur in the first year, but here we thought actually it would make more sense if actually this was one of the things that the students were able to reflect on towards the back end of the program instead. So we've moved it to the second year now. And here the focus is on just looking at some of the different key elements of nutrition and how they impact on exercise, and some of the key strategies that a nutritionist might use in working with people involved in either high performance sport or on a clinical basis if you're thinking about managing obesity, weight loss, that kind of thing. So this program is in the second year, and again it was something that we wondered whether it would be a bit of a distraction to the core exercise physiology nature of the MKin program, but our current and previous students again told us that this was something they really enjoyed, they found really valuable, and so we have managed to retain it within the program, and we've just jiggled the order of things around a little bit. So I hope that gives you a little bit of a flavor for each of the different courses. I'm sorry, that's a little bit of a rapid potted background of each of the different courses. Of course, I'm happy to try and elaborate a little bit more on those. I don't teach all of the courses myself, which you might be relieved to hear. So I can comment with variable detail on the different courses, but we do have some of our students here as well, both present and former, so they can give you a little bit more insight in if there are some specific questions that Alex and I can't ask in terms of what the experience is like or what the nature of the assessments are if we can't remember. But in general, know that most courses are assessed by coursework and practical skills. There are very few, I think, they're assessed by exams. I'm looking at Alex at this point. She's for Qs, but I think relatively there are not so many exams. It's much more weighted towards coursework and practical skills.
This past year especially, we've tried to move away from having as many exams and quizzes and move towards more assignments, lab work, etc. And that is the goal moving forward as well, is to continue moving towards more of a hands-on assessment model rather than a regurgitating exam model.
And Alex, perhaps this is a good point just for me to talk about from the program director point of view of the philosophy of the course in that regard as well. So really what we've aimed to bring to the fore in reviewing the program and putting through the changes that we have is to provide people with an opportunity to really develop themselves as professionals and practitioners in exercise physiology. And hopefully it doesn't make any difference whether your particular aspiration is in terms of working in sport and in particular high performance sport or in a clinical exercise physiology, because there are lots of skill sets that are common to both of those. But what we recognize is that it's not just about being great at the theory, but you've actually got to be able to work with people and to be able to use your own what is frequently referred to as soft skill set. And so what we try to do is to focus on a program that develops a really rounded individual in terms of their ability to work in exercise physiology. So great competence and excellence from a from a laboratory and theoretical perspective, but also from as a practitioner as well, the ability to reflect on your own strengths and weaknesses and to manage your own continuing development as you go through your career. Those are the kinds of things that we've particularly started to bring more to the fore in the program. And therefore we tried to tailor the assessments to reflect that as well. So whereas in the past, particularly early on, there may have been quite a heavy emphasis on the theoretical side. So for example, the professor in charge of the course would deliver the curriculum and then assess you on that curriculum. Now we're encouraging the staff to really focus on how the students develop during the course and their reflective skills and how they're enhanced during the course. And then finally, what that theory looks like in practice too. So to try and bring that aspect out. So it's not just about the theory, but also what that looks like from a practical basis too, what the challenges and issues are of trying to sit or straddle that space where you're both making an important contribution from your expert knowledge, because that's why you're a graduate student, but at the same time translating that for the benefit of the patients or the performers or coaches that you're working with too. Back to you, Alex.
All right. A little bit on practicums. As I mentioned, you would do 2 practicums, a minimum of 100 hours each through the course of this program. This is just a synopsis of some practicum placements that students have completed in the last couple of years. So we have a number of clinical related placements, a bunch with Alberta Health Services, 2 right now. We've got one with the transplant program, Southern Alberta Transplant Program, and one with the Pediatric Center for Weight and Health. So even though COVID is impacting a lot of ability to do practicums, we were still able to secure practicums for all students. We've had students at InLive, Full Circle Health. We were going to have students at Copeman Healthcare. That didn't work out, but I am assuming it will be an option moving forward. We've had students at Spinal Cord Injury Alberta, and we've had a number of students at the Health and Wellness Lab here at the UC, run by Dr. Nicole Coolers-Reed, so working on Alberta Cancer Exercise Program, Thrive Center, etc. From high performance sport side, we still have a good relationship with the Canadian Sport Institute and have a number of students who go to different placements there. Calgary being the primary one, either in exercise physiology or biomechanics. We have also in the past had students go to CSI Pacific, working more on the strength and conditioning side. We often have students go to Calgary Flames. That is a competitive placement, so lots of people are interested, and unfortunately not everyone gets to go, but it is an option. Christine may talk about this, but she did her placement over spring summer with the strength guys. We've had students at Bold Athlete, and they have connected with me recently and are very interested in having more students. And then alumnus, Carla Robbins, runs Vital Strength and Physiology, working with teams at SAIT and the U of C, and we have had students working with her. And then we do have some other placements that don't exactly fit in the clinical or high performance sports side. We've got a placement right now with the Sport Injury Prevention Research Center here at the U of C. But there's options to do research type work and also education work. We've had occupational settings with the Calgary Fire Department. We've had a number of research and kind of research / practical placements, such as the clinical and translational exercise physiology lab, which Nick might be able to talk about because he did a placement there. Ultimately, when it comes down to practicums, we have some placements that are pretty much available every year, but I'm also very flexible. So if you have connections with an organization and you want to create a practicum placement there, we can see if that's possible. We want to make sure that it will use your skills that you've learned as an MKin student and benefit you moving forwards into working after you graduate. But ultimately, I want placements to be something that engage you and allow you to move into fields that you're interested in. And so yes, the sky is kind of the limit based on that. And I am happy to connect you with people or help you connect with people. And we always find students practicums, and most of them are happy about them. Possible career outcomes. You could probably tell from the practicum placements, but we have students working in chronic disease management, healthcare and wellness programs, occupational physiology, not a lot of alumni in this area, but some. High performance sport for sure. We have a ton of alumni working with the various Canadian sport institutes, not just Calgary, but Atlantic, Pacific, so on and so forth. We have students working in NHL. We have an alumni with the Pittsburgh Penguins, alumni with the LA Kings. So there are lots of high performance MKin graduates out there. And then we again have that kind of other category. We have MKins who are working in education as teachers, as instructors. A number of students go on to medicine. A number of students really get bitten by the research bug and go on to MSc or PhD routes. And some are half bitten by the research bug and go into more of a lab coordinator or a practical research type position where they're running participants for an exercise physiology lab. Final slide of this presentation is about admission. I have a PDF that I'll put into the chat when I'm out of sharing my screen that kind of summarizes this as well. But application deadline is March 1st. When you're applying, you apply online and you write a letter of intent. You note relevance. I'm not going to read all of this. You talk about your academic history, your work history, any publications, presentations, certifications that you have. Maybe you are already a CEP. Maybe you have a physio background and now you're moving into this. We are looking for GPA, degree GPA, the last half of your degree, a 3.0 or B. And then we have the 5 prerequisite courses: anatomy, biomechanics, exercise physiology, sport/exercise psychology, and statistics, of which we are looking for a B as well in those. And then you are also in the application noting any awards, achievements, honors, distinctions. 2 reference letters at a minimum, ideally academic. You can have more referees, and if you are applying and want to have more than 2 referees, reach out to me. We can't do it through the system, but we can do it via email. I will end the presentation here, and I will go into the chat and attach my cheat sheet for 2021. Which outlines all of that I just said, and also includes contact information for me. We will go on to our alumni and current students now. Nick, I'm going to start with you.
So I can just kind of touch on some reasons why I chose the program and kind of experiences with the program and practicum experiences and future goals and where I sit right now. So I took the MKin program primarily because I really liked exercise physiology when I did my undergrad, which may or may not be echoed by some of the individuals in the chat. I'm not too sure. It's definitely a mixed bag. But I loved it. And so I wanted to do a graduate program that had me in that same field, but I wasn't super keen on doing tons of research. So I thought that the course-based nature of the MKin program was kind of like the perfect amalgamation of the two fields. And so that's why I chose to take it. And the program itself, so I took it between 2018 to 2020. So I graduated just last June, and the program by and large is very similar to what you guys saw on the PowerPoint screen before. There was just a slight reshuffling of courses, but very much hands-on, spent lots and lots of time in the lab. What Louis had said previously about going into the lab and getting to use all the equipment, kind of just jumping in there is very, very true. You're kind of expected to learn how to use the equipment for your own, and it's for your benefit because you'll be using it throughout your whole degree, and in some cases you'll be TAing courses, and that equipment will be available for you to use, and you kind of have to know how to troubleshoot and use it with your own students. So very hands-on, very practical. Courses themselves, I thought, built a lot of theoretical knowledge around the concepts that you learn in the lab. So whatever you're learning within the lab is kind of structured or reinforced by what you're learning in the actual class itself. So the concepts go really well hand in hand. In terms of the amount of coursework and the loads, I get this question a lot from from other students that ask. It tends to be pretty heavy. I remember being in an MKin session just like this one, maybe 4 years ago, asking the same question, and the students were pretty honest about it being fairly grueling. I think the program itself has, the course load has lessened over the years because students have reached out and just discussed how it's difficult to juggle, say, a part-time job and a TA position alongside the coursework. I think it's become a lot more manageable in that regard, but you still need a fair amount of time management skills and organization to be able to get through it rather effectively. Practicum wise, I did 2 practicum placements. So one, like Alex had mentioned, was at the clinical and translational exercise physiology lab, where I was primarily assisting the lead physiologist in conducting exercise testing for research studies. So a little bit more research based, but also had that practical component. And then my other placement was at the Southern Alberta Renal Program, which was out of the Sheldon Schumer. And there we helped, myself and the lead kinesiologist helped develop exercise programs for patients that were undergoing renal dialysis, which is really cool, very clinical, very up my alley in that clinical world. And in terms of what I'm up to now, I was hoping to go on and get my CEP designation and then try to find some work in the clinical realm. But COVID put a stop to that. And during that time, I was offered a position at my local rec center as a shift supervisor. So it was a full-time position, and I decided, why not go ahead and take it? So that's where I'm sitting right now. I'm hoping to go on into the field of medicine. I know a lot of other individuals have been thinking about that too. So we'll wait and see what happens with that. But by and large, that's my experience.
Thank you, Nick. Let's go on to Megan.
All right, hi everyone. So I'm Megan. I'm currently in my 2nd year of the MKin program, so almost finished up here. I'll kind of echo Nick a little bit on some of my points. I think he said it very well, but going into the MKin, I didn't do my undergrad here. I did it at UBC, and I also loved exercise physiology. I also didn't want to do a ton of research, but I knew I wanted to continue my education in some way. And so this program checked a lot of those boxes in terms of the practical aspect of it. I'm particularly interested in the clinical side of things, so a more preventative medicine standpoint. And so I thought this would be a really good opportunity to explore that a little bit more. In terms of the program itself, I've really enjoyed the hands-on experience. So getting into the lab and learning kind of on your own. And then that in conjunction with our practicum. So kind of taking some of those skills and applying them in a setting where we can learn from other people that are working in the field already has been a really awesome opportunity so far. In terms of the coursework, it is a little bit intense the first year in particular, because you are building that foundation. But one of the things that was really beneficial is it is quite a small program. So there's about 10 students in your cohort. And I found that that's one of the most beneficial aspects, is working together with your fellow students to kind of piece things together and use each other as resources. That's been really beneficial for sure. Yeah, so I did 2 practicums as well. So I did, in the fall, I worked with the Southern Alberta Transplant Program. I was working alongside one of the MKin alumni, actually, and she works as an exercise physiologist, working with individuals on the transplant list, primarily with lung and liver patients. And so we did a lot of pre-screening, a little bit of health coaching, and then building individualized programs for these individuals, so we can get them a little stronger before they go into their transplant, which was really clinical, and I thoroughly enjoyed that. It was a really great learning opportunity for me. And then this semester, I'm currently working with the Health and Wellness Lab with ACE, so Alberta Cancer Exercise Programs. So working with patients who are currently battling cancer, and we're doing different kind of group classes and things like that. So a little different, but also very clinical. And I've really enjoyed that. So I'm hoping, kind of like Nick said, going on to doing my CEP. Now that that's kind of up and running a little bit here, hoping to work in that clinical setting. I'm a little bit interested in the mental health side of things, actually. So that's something I'm exploring a little bit more this semester. So hoping to see how we can apply some of these exercise physiology foundations and concepts to more of a mental health side compared to the physical health. So lots of options, and I'm kind of excited to see where things go from here.
Thanks, Megan. Now we will go on to Christine, who is more interested in the high performance sports side, to offer a bit of a contrasting opinion.
Yeah, so hopefully I can help balance it out. So first off, I'd like to say it's nice to see some of you guys again. So I'm going to try to not repeat what my colleagues have said. So I'm a bit different. So why I decided to apply for MKin was that, like many of you, 2 years ago, I was in this position and I was like finishing up my undergrad, and I was like, what's the next step? What do I do? And so what I decided to do was I tried to connect with people that were doing what I wanted to do, like we're being like high performance strength and conditioning coaches. So I connected with a variety of people from MSc to MKin, and it really led to my decision wanting to do an MKin, because yes, research isn't my strong point, but I enjoy the coaching side and the hands-on experience. So I connected with MKin alumni such as Jeff Ozadek, Carla Robbins, and what the stories of MKin really resonated with what I wanted to do. Many of them were talking about how what they learned like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, they still apply to this day. And so I wanted to do the MKin because I wanted to get mentored by many of the instructors like Alex and Louie here, who have mentored many elite strength and conditioning exercise physiologists in this program. So what has been the most valuable part of the program? So similar to Nick and Megan, the resources and the mentors, as well as, UFC, we have the #1, like we're #1 in North America for exercise science. So I think it's a great place to learn. So I think like also utilizing how with MKin, we don't necessarily have like a research lab, but we have these resources. So we could go to CIPRC if we want to learn more about injury prevention, or we could go to HPL and learn more about biomechanics like Walter Herzog or Brian McIntosh. And similar to Megan, I think like what made this experience really valuable is our cohort and also the year before and ahead of us. Like, I consider Nick one of our mentors. He really helped me in first year, and I think it's really important to communicate with your colleagues, as you know, doing it alone isn't fun. For coursework, so going to the strength and conditioning side of things, I was a competitive powerlifter in my first year, and trying to manage that with schoolwork was a bit difficult. So I'd recommend just be very cautious of that. It did take a toll on my health, so I'd recommend, if you are athletes, to really talk to your instructor. Like, I know I competed when we had lab one day, and the instructors were very flexible with my competition. Practicum. So yeah, I'm a bit different, like going to what Alex had said about practicum opportunities and reaching out. So it took a process. I'm sure Alex remembered. I like reached out to like 10 different like places, and I wasn't quite sure. So I did 2 practicums online with powerlifting. So I'm more strength focused, but I do think that a lot of like concepts that we learn in exercise physiology that might be endurance training based can be utilized in the real world, even in strength training. So I did 2 practicums, one being with the Strength Guys. They're a world-renowned coaching company for powerlifters. And it was just me reaching out and saying that I'm a master's student, I'm interested, led me to those like opportunities. If I wasn't a master's student, I'm not sure if they would accept a new coaching. So I think that being a master's student gives you opportunities. The second practicum I'm doing is a kind of a mix of 2, just because of the situation right now, COVID. But one of them is because of my referral from the Strength Guys. I've been given the opportunity to do a practicum with Megan Bryanton from the Kinetic Advantage Consulting Company, which is a powerlifting biomechanist company that focuses on using stuff like dartfish and video analysis. What I realized was I was interested in biomechanics, but I was interested in the applied component. And I knew that with MKin, it is very exercise physiology based, but I think a good mentor of mine told me that exercise physiology impacts biomechanics, which I'm starting to review a lot of what I'm learning from like 673 into my practicum. And then I'm also doing a practicum with the men's and women's basketball team with Rich Hesketh, just trying to improve my coaching eye as well as coaching there. So yes, trying to balance the strength and conditioning with the clinical side. I do think there's a good mix of both. What am I doing now and what I do after I graduate? I'm a bit different. I guess you guys realize that I'm a bit different, but I am currently working part-time and will be transferring full-time as a copywriter for a health and fitness agency. The position, so usually I'm interested in the business side. I'm also interested in the entrepreneurial side, which is like a possibility that you guys do, like if you guys are interested in opening a company. The reason why they had actually hired me because of my having a master's, but not in a business setting. It was because of my critical thinking that I've utilized and that I've like developed, as well as my knowledge in exercise physiology, that they chose me over like other business degrees. So if you're interested in even the business realm of things too, I think that MKin can give you those opportunities. And I'm also have my own coaching company working and training powerlifters as well. So that's my long-winded answer.
Thank you, Christine. I will say COVID has provided a number of challenges, as I'm sure you're all aware. We were lucky to be able to continue offering most of our MKin courses on campus. And as I said, we were able to find everyone practicum placements, some in person, some online, some a mix of each. And that will be the same next year, if not better. And one benefit of COVID has been that we've really reconnected with a lot of our alumni. I arranged a bunch of alumni sessions over the summer for current students and incoming students, and they were very happy to be engaged. So there is the option. We've basically developed practicum placements from those alumni, and they're attending seminars and talking in practicum course this term about salary negotiations and stuff like that. So what I am trying to say is that if there's a field you are interested in, likely we have an alumni working there and we can connect you. I think now it is 10 to 11 to 3, so we'll open up to questions. I am able to stay past 3, but I appreciate that not everyone may be able to. So you are welcome to put questions in the chat or email them. And I see there is a question in the chat.
Hi, Alex. I'll just jump in for a second because yes, there's a few questions just come up. There's the first one was about doing a PhD after the MKin. And I've just posted a message back about that, but saying essentially most universities would expect that if you're going on to a PhD, you would have done a master's, an MSc prior to beginning the PhD. And we have a couple of our MKin students who are actually doing that right now. So they've begun the MSc program alongside the MKin with the possible view to going on to doing a PhD subsequently. So the MKin doesn't necessarily take you straight onto the PhD program. You may well need an MSc as well. Is there anything more you want to add to that?
Here at the U of C, there is the option as well to enroll. So you complete your MKin, you enroll in the MSc, you have the option to transfer to the PhD rather than needing to fully complete the MSc. It's not a guarantee, and other institutions may not offer that. So that's all that I would add.
Okay, thank you. And then the next one I think is probably a good one for you to ask, which is about whether you need a B in exercise physiology, for example, Canis 373 as part of the admission.
Yes. So for U of C courses, the exercise physiology is equivalent to 373. Now, if there's a higher level exercise physiology course that you've taken and so say you got a B- in 373, but then you took, I'm not good at the higher level undergrad courses, but let's say 475, and you got a B+ or an A- in that, we could use that grade in place of the 373 grade, but for most students at the UC, it is the 373. And then I see that there's a question about tuition for international students. The MKin is a course-based program, so you pay tuition per course. These rates are subject to change, but for a 3-credit course, Canadian students pay about $760 per course, and international students pay about $1,780 per course. So basically $1,000 more for international students per course, and MKin students take 15 courses over 20 years. 20 years, wow, that's a really long degree. 20 months. And I'm happy to email anyone who has tuition questions a link to the tuition page and break it down more in detail for you.
I see there was, you jumped over one, which was Blair's question about the Capstone project and whether that's individual or group based. And Blair, essentially the idea behind the Capstone project was that we want it to be whatever the MKin students want it to be. So if there are other people that are interested in working with you on a group-based project because the scope of the project is sufficiently large or grand that it needs more than one person, then it can be group-based. When we initially conceived it, we were imagining that it may be done more on an individual basis, but that's not to say that it can't be done as a group. So you could go into it expecting that it may be on an individual basis, but if there's something you want to do that was particularly ambitious and you could drum up some support from your peers, then there'd be absolutely no problem with doing it on a group basis either. The key thing to remember, and I think this is correct, Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, would be the assessments would be based on an individual basis rather than a group.
Correct.
So you might do something as a group, but it would be your submission that you get evaluated against.
Yes, yeah, and that's something that we would ultimately have to play by ear. This is a new course, so we haven't figured out all of the assessment aspects of it, but likely, even if it was done as a group, you would each have individual things that you would submit for grading, is my kind of assumption. But yes, we would need to figure that out as we moved forward with the course. I am seeing, if you graduate and decide to come back, would the admission requirements be the same? If I'm misunderstanding, let me know, but are you saying that if you graduate now and decide to come back and apply in 2 years to the MKin, would the admission requirements change? The admission requirements haven't changed in 5 years, the time that I've been with the MKin program. I don't really anticipate them changing. We would maybe remove a prerequisite course if we saw that it wasn't useful. I don't think at this stage we would be looking to add anything or to increase our GPA requirements. So it's not a guarantee, but a fairly safe bet that the admission requirements aren't changing in the next couple of years. And then also, if you choose credit for one of the courses with the past semesters, would that be a problem? No, obviously lots of institutions have instituted credit fail due to COVID. And basically, if you have a credit, we will accept that to meet prerequisite requirements. What are the format, the references? So references are a reference form and a letter. So when you fill out your referee's information online and submit your application, the system will email them with a link to the form and then instructions on how to upload their form and their letter. And if you are wanting to have more than 2 references, that is when you can connect with me and I can send you the form so that additional referees can email the form and letter to me.
And Alex, can I just jump in for a second here and just say that please don't feel that this get together now online is the only chance that you've got to ask questions. So these are great questions that you're posing, and we're very happy to answer these questions at any point. So particularly if they relate to your application and the likelihood of you being successful with your application, please don't be afraid to reach out to either me or Alex if you have a query and you want to just check something before applying for the program. We're more than happy to do that. And actually, as I know one caller on the line will tell you, because I've spoken to her previously, I'm very happy to give you general guidance around comparing, for example, the MKin and the MSc program if you're unsure about which route you want to go down, or even to talk to you about whether a different course at another university might be appropriate for you, because I see myself as the program coordinator and being something of a mentor to the people that come on this program. But part of that is a responsibility for me then to try and do my best to make sure that you're on the most appropriate program in the first instance. So if you're really unsure about whether it's the U of C or somewhere else that's right for you, I'm more than happy to arrange a call to talk through the relative strengths and weaknesses of this program against programs elsewhere as well, because I'd much rather see you on the right course. I'm not trying to sell this program particularly. I'm much more interested in looking after your best interests in that regard. So just jumping in on that one and anticipating that some people may need to go and we might not get through all of the questions. So if your question doesn't get answered or you don't feel like you're going to get the chance to ask it right now, please don't feel free to reach out to us after this instead.
Yes, I am always happy to answer questions about admissions, about the program, set up Zoom calls, do that a lot. I will try to go through some of the other questions that are in the chat, and Louis, you might be getting some to you specifically, and jump in if so. How many students are accepted into the program each year? Currently 10. We may be looking at increasing that in future, maybe up to 15, but nothing confirmed there. So right now, assume 10. And then do all MKin students TA 4373 or do you apply? For TA-ships, you apply. We give priority to MKins for Canis 203 and Canis 373. But there are always more applicants than there are TA positions, so some students are unfortunately not successful. But I think Christine and Megan can say that I hope that everyone who wanted to TA out of the MKins got to TA this year. If you have less than a B in one of the prerequisites, is there a possibility of still being accepted? Yes, we've admitted students who are missing or have less than a B in biomechanics, in statistics, and in sport/exercise psychology. The key thing to keep in mind is that that makes your application slightly less competitive, say, than someone who got A's in all 5 prerequisite courses. Exercise physiology, I think it's safe to say, is the most important of those prerequisites. If you did not do super well in that, you're probably you may want to consider if this program is for you, because several students who are U of C graduates have said that it's like 373 on steroids. So if you did not enjoy and did not do well in 373, MKin program might not be for you. But also you might not be set up for success. And that's the big reason that the prerequisites are there, is to set you up for success in the program. And we've seen success with a bit of flexibility in the stats, a bit of flexibility in biomechanics, but anatomy and exercise physiology, a little more strict. With 3.0 being the GPA, is there a competitive average that is much higher? I get this question a lot. It's hard to answer because while the U of C is in a 4-point scale, not every institution is in a 4-point scale. Some are in 9-point scale, some are in 12-point scale. I would say kind of like an average admission GPA is in the 3.5 range. But that being said, we admit students across the 3.0 to the 4.0 range. So someone with a 3.0 may have a CEP, may have a strength and conditioning certificate, and may therefore be more competitive than someone with a 4.0 who has no practical experience. So what I always recommend is that not just to focus on the GPA, but to focus on the other things that you may have to complement your application. Do references have to be a part of the UC staff, a professor, or can they be external? They don't have to be a UC faculty member or instructor or sessional. We ask in the application system for 2 academic referees. That is often someone who has instructed you, but could be someone who you worked with in a research capacity. If you can't get 2 academic referees, you are definitely welcome to use professional references. So they can comment on your practical skills, your aptitude for picking up skills. They can be just as strong of a reference as an academic. Any questions on your end, Louis?
I think I've answered all the ones that were to me directly or were stuck in the waiting room and not let in. Is there anybody that wants to ask a question in person? And particularly I'm thinking of this is a great opportunity if you want to speak to either our alumni, Nick, or one of our current students, Megan or Christina.
Well, I think there is one for me from Nick. Christine, do you believe there are plenty of opportunities to work with high-level athletes as a result of this program? What I would say is that if you have a positive outlook, anything is possible. And as Alex and Louis had mentioned, some people have gone on to be NHL strength and conditioning coaches, as well as working at CSI, working with Olympic and high performance athletes. So it is very possible with this program. I think it's what you utilize in your practicum opportunities. So I'm kind of known as the one who connects with people in my cohort. And I think that, like, I'm actually really introverted, but if you get me to email someone behind the scenes, I'm willing to do it. So my biggest advice is, even now, don't be afraid to reach out. You never know what that opportunity could lead, which is how I got my first practicum with the strength guys. Just waking up one day and being like, I'm going to email them, and just that opportunity popped up.
Christine, can I add a little bit extra just on to that as well? So just implicit in the question is whether there are plenty of opportunities to work with high-level athletes. And I just like to say, no, there are not plenty of opportunities, because the work and working with high-level athletes is a highly competitive field. But I think this program sets you up well. And the other thing that I'd add is just to reinforce what Christine said, is that one of the things that makes her such an amazing person on this program is how much effort she puts into pursuing both the development of the program, but also the development of her own opportunities as well. And I think that's a key aspect of all of this, is that we're creating an environment for you to try and succeed in, but a lot of it comes down to you being successful in that environment and putting the effort in too. So whether it's clinical or high performance, I don't think there are plenty of opportunities, but we would hope that our graduates are very well placed to take advantage of that. And then the very last thing I just want to add is that, as I've said before, I see myself very much as a mentor of the program, and that's and I say this for Nick's benefit now, as much for the alumni as it is for the present students in terms of guiding them, because of course we're often the people that the alumni come back to for references or to connect with other people that we may be aware of that might hold the key to an opportunity going forward. And so I think that's another key aspect of the program as well. It's something that I take very seriously, if I give the impression of taking anything seriously at all. It's that is the importance of me trying to do my best is to enable you in your careers going forwards. And I know that Alex feels exactly the same on that regard too. So sorry for jumping across you there, Christine. I just wanted to add those extra points.
We are at 3:05. So I appreciate that our visiting speakers may have other things that they need to do. So if anyone has any final questions, please feel free to ask or pop them in the chat. And if not, we'll wrap up.
And I'll just say that I will linger for a minute. So if anybody wants to stay on but doesn't want to ask a question of everybody, then I'll hang around for a bit like, you know, at the end of a talk when most people are leaving, and there's one or two that want to stay and ask questions. I'll do that kind of thing for a minute or two, just in case there's anyone. Otherwise, it'll be Alex and I talking to each other.
Yep, exactly.
Firstly, thank you very much to our present students, Christine and Megan, and also to Nick. And Nick, apologies for all that abuse. I bet you're wondering why you ever bothered to come back. But we're very grateful to you for coming back and talking about the program. Thank you. And then finally, thank you to all of you for coming along and your interest in the program. And as I said, please feel free to reach out to us if we can help. And I'll hang around for a little bit now.